Hey guys, how you doing? It's Pandora. I'm back with another video, and this one's going to be a little bit different. This is going to be more of I think, a discussion style video more than anything else. I've got some gameplay underneath, and it's really just a couple of videos that I just put together of me acing certain tanks. They haven't featured on my channel so far, and they were recorded after I may have done reviews of certain tanks. So I decided to put them all together, create one big video, and there's just a few areas of discussion that I just wanted to talk about. This has been recorded on the 14th of January 2019, and it's during patch 5.6, and I believe 5.7 is coming either this week or the following week. So 3 or 4 main areas I just wanted to talk about. First one being the Christmas event. I'm just going to talk briefly and reflect maybe on that briefly. Second thing, I suppose, is something that I've been really kind of wanted to discuss for quite some time, and it's really concerning around the negativity in the game and the negativity of the World of Tanks Blitz community and just the gameplay in general. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch upon was some of the changes, the upcoming changes down in 5.7, which should be either this week or the following week. So I'm going to get started with the Christmas event, and it's kind of hard to explain the Christmas event this year. It's been a little bit of kind of everything for everyone in a way. It's almost like the developers kind of came up with different ways or different options for the event, and decided to put them all together in one big super event. There were 3 or 4 different options that people could have taken to try and get a tank or get something new, and I think it was an event where everybody I think could have got something. So the first option, I think, was I suppose the main part was really a grind. It was a grind event for the Panzer S, the Star Chaser tank, the tier 6 German medium. Where you had to grind a certain amount of games every day, use your ×2 or your ×5, and collect tokens during games that you'd won. So from what I've been told, I didn't grind that myself. I grinded some of it, and from what I've heard, it was grindable. People were, I think it was easy enough to get that tank in the end. So I think there's a few people in the clan that ended up getting the tank. I myself didn't. The second option then was, I suppose, the second option to get something was the auction, where a lot of people, if they had gold, you could place or bid during the daily. There was a daily price set for a certain amount of gold for certain tanks. So premium tanks like the Defender, the Mark 6, the M60, the AMX49, M449, for example. Those are just tanks that I think were given during different events through Blitz, and Wargaming put them on auction. So last couple of updates, a lot of people have had the opportunity to get some gold on their account where they could have sold collectible tanks after patch 5.5. So in the current climate, there's a lot of gold that's circulating on people's accounts, where they may have sold tanks that became collectible tanks, and they could have used that gold then to get a tank. So I think, from positively speaking, from the perspective of maybe free-to-play gamers, people who don't spend a lot of money on the game but were able to get gold on their accounts, they could have used that to get some highly coveted premium tanks. So I think just general feedback from that, I think most people were happy. People who did, been reading a lot of comments from videos on YouTube and a lot of comments, the general consensus is that a lot of people were able to get tanks that they wanted. So a lot of positivity in that perspective. The last option then was the grind event for to decorate your Christmas tree, and that would earn you the ability to try and get the T22. Now, that side of the event was a little bit worse, a little bit worse. The event itself was done in such a way that you had to spend money in order to try and get the tank. I read a lot of comments and a lot of people on YouTube and a lot of people just on Twitter and stuff like that, different, even on the subreddit for World of Tanks Blitz, were um, they were quite annoyed by that. A lot of people spent up to €400 plus to try and get a tank that they didn't get in the end. Personally, I'll be honest, I feel hard to sympathise with those people. The last couple of events, if you've been playing the game for long enough, you'd know that wargaming have this element in the game where you can gamble for a tank, where you can gamble any amount of money if you've got it, to try and get a tank that they create so much hype on. And the T22 is a tier 10 medium Russian tank that there has been a lot of hype on. It's got a pike nose, it's got very troll armor, and people who have got the tank were quite vocal in the fact that it's a very powerful tank and it's very strong. Um, a lot of people spent a lot of money on the game to try and get that tank, and then they played the victim card a little bit and complained when they didn't get the car, get the tank. And like I said, I kind of struggle to sympathize with those people. This is an element of the last couple of events that Wargaming have been doing where you're not guaranteed to get the tank. And yet, after every event, people complain that they didn't get the tank. And they cry. And they tell everybody that they're not playing the game anymore because they were stupid enough to spend €400 on something that they didn't get. Um, it's it's crazy. It's only when people stop doing this that wargaming will stop doing it. And this event has been nothing but successful for people for wargaming. It was an event where people could get something, but wargaming got a lot. Um, so in terms of the actual event itself, it's kind of, I suppose it was positive if you were sensible around your money. I myself, I spent, I think I spent like 30, anywhere between 30 and €35, and I actually spent money on the discounted gold. There was an offer for 30,000 gold plus 30, just over 30,000 to get 30,000 gold, and I spent money on that to get that gold. You had to grind so many games to be able to accumulate the gold and then buy it. So there was a package for like 20,000 gold, 10,000 gold, and something like 3,000 gold or something like that. And they had to accumulate by playing games, and then you could buy it. Um, and I spent about €35 on that, and then I spent like 20,000 of that gold on the 121B, which was for sale in the store at the time. I had a look at some of the reviews of the tank, and Bushka, Skate Extreme, Meadsy, Martin Dogger, they all have reviews of that tank, and they all kind of agree that it's a very good tank. And you know, at the time, because of the offer on the gold, it was at a discounted rate. I decided that I would spend, I would get the 121B, which realistically at the time for that offer, it was pretty much you were picking up a tier 10 medium tank for €20, about 22 euro, which was a bargain. So I decided to get that. I know there's a lot of people that aren't happy that there's tier 10 tanks that are up for sale. I'm not going to comment on that, but at the time it was a bargain for me. I've already got the Object 140. and they're giving the reviews. It's a very good tank. So I decided to get that tank. So I mean, like I said, there was a little bit of everything for everyone. If you were sensible with your money, you could have got something that you wanted. Um, and yeah, the Christmas event is over for the most part. I'm kind of happy that it is over because the general gameplay during these events just seems to deteriorate. People just forget how to play the game, and they're just not patient. They they seem to lack patience. They seem to just forget how to play the game completely, and just there's a lot of stupid gameplay during these events. Seems to be a reoccurring theme, and I found myself victim to that as well. But yeah, I didn't go too crazy. I got what I wanted at the end of the day, so I just kind of done, kind of happy that the event is over and done with. Wargaming, I feel, are kind of playing it they're kind of milking these events a little bit too much, and I'm at the point where I'm not really interested in these events anymore. I'll try and understand wargaming and how they explain how the events are going to be, because I think they always make a bit of a mess of it. They never really explain how to grind the event properly, and I always find myself trying to find a YouTube video on how to actually partake in the event and what to do, and people's opinions on what to do for the event. So yeah, just happy that it's over. Second thing I wanted to talk about was really just, I suppose, something that's been part and parcel of the game for quite some time now. It's really centered around negativity and the in-game vibes, and this is really coming off the Christmas event and the negativity that seems to surround these kind of events, and just seems to affect the gameplay and how people react to it. I, for the most part, I could probably talk about more about military honor and some of the success and failures of military honor and how that works and how it doesn't work and how it's being abused and how it's not being abused. I could probably talk about the ability for people to turn off the in-game chat and why people should maybe do that and why people don't do it. I actually tried doing it during the Christmas event. What I found myself doing is turning it back on because I felt like I was missing out on understanding what the team was planning on doing. And you can see here in this game, I'm using in-game chat because I think it's an advantage to be able to communicate with the people on your team. Just the theme, a theme of the game now is that people are abusing the in-game chat. They're using it to criticize other people and how they play the game. They're using it to vent. They're using it to rant. They're using it to express their frustration and try and, in some way, try and justify the way that they play the game. I'm finding there seems to be a bigger trend where there's people who are playing the game, inexperienced people who are playing the game, who are learning really, really bad behavior of other people who play the game. During the Christmas event, I just observed more and more 40% players who were just ranting in game. 40% players who don't do anything in the game, they end up dying and they just rant and they just complain and moan and they cry. And they seem to think that if they can trash talk, if they can talk crap, that's enough. And that justifies what they did in the game. I think it's becoming more and more of an issue. And like I said, you can turn off the in-game chat. In a way, I'm kind of choosing to put myself through this in a way, but I don't think that's the solution. Turning off the chat, I don't think is the solution. Realistically, what I would like people to do, and it's probably easier said than done, but I think people should be held accountable for what they do, what they say, how they behave in a game that's a free-to-play game. It's got real people playing it at the end of the day. There's real people behind the keyboard, and they're free to do and say and play however they want. There seems to be a meta where we seem to we now there seems to be a lot of excuses around bad gameplay, and instead people should be taking accountability for what they do and what they bring to a game. And people, I honestly, I think people should be harder on themselves. They should question what they bring to the game and what they're contributing to the game, as opposed to criticizing other people and how they play the game. Now, I mean, that's easier said than done. I find myself ranting in game. Um, I could be quite salty in the game myself if I feel like somebody isn't pulling their weight. I mean, in the past, I mean, I have had no problem with calling people out and just questioning what they're doing, which isn't the right thing at the end of the day. There's the sad thing about it is that there's a lot more inexperienced people playing the higher tiers at the moment, and I don't know if that's a problem, but it's a feature of the game now. And since 5.5, because the lower tier tanks have been removed or they've been turned into collectible tanks, there's a lot more lower percent players who are playing higher tiers. There's a lot of people who didn't learn the lessons that were there to be learned at tier 5, tier 4, tier 5, tier 6, tier 7. And there's a lot of people who just realistically they don't know how to play certain tanks. And now people seem to feel like it's their right to be able to rant about that in game. Rant about it on various different communities. I'll just give you an example of something. Like I'm a fan of the World of Tanks Blitz subreddit, but what I'm finding now is that there's a lot of people who will post something, or they will post somebody's stats, and they will complain that you've got say a 38% win rate player who's got a tier 8 tank, and meanwhile they've only got 2 tier 2 tanks, but they've been playing X amount of games in tier 8, and that it's not that person's right to be able to buy and collect a tank. Now this is a problem in the game. I think everybody's got an opinion on it, and wargaming, a lot of people are critical of wargaming and how they sell the game, with regards to how they allow people to do that. But if you think about it, wargaming is a business at the end of the day. They're not going to stop people from being able to buy premium tanks, tier 8 premium tanks, and play those tier 8 premium tanks. So there's a lot of people who think that wargaming need to stop that, but they're not really. What are the alternatives for wargaming? What's the win-win for the player base and for wargaming that alters this behavior? There's none. And to be honest, I think since the changes to 5.5, I find it very hard to imagine how the new players are playing the game today. I can't understand how. It's harder for me because I've got a premium account. It's very hard to grind credits now. There's so much of an emphasis on grinding credits, and being able to generate credits in order to get the next module. Playing tanks when they're stock tanks is a horrible experience, and it impacts people's win rates, and it impacts people's ability to enjoy the game. People want to progress through a game faster. That's just human nature. People don't like spending time on something where there's this almost need or this desire for instant results. People want to be able to play tier 8 tanks from the very start and learn the lessons at tier 8 as opposed to learning those lessons at the lower tiers. Personally, I think after the changes of 5.5, I think there's very few tanks that are in the game that really teach a person how to side scrape. For example, I think the tier 4, the DW2, I think that's one tank where people actually learn how to side scrape. And personally, like Wargaming have made changes to the DW2. They've made it a collectible tank. I'm not saying that there's not tanks out there that teach those lessons, but there's very few tanks that do it as well as, say, for example, the DW2. For me, I thought that was a very good tank at tier 4 that kind of taught people how to side scrape and how to use effective armor. And Wargaming have kind of removed that and changed that in the game, which I could never really understand. There's certain tanks that they made changes to that I don't think they should have changed, and I get that they may be premium tanks. Take for example the Panzer S35 at tier 3. I think it was a Canadian tank. I'm not sure. It was a British Canadian tank at tier 3 that had mad armor. Take the R35 for example. Like Wargaming, their in-game tutorial isn't good enough. And originally when they introduced the changes to 5.5, they said that they were doing it for the new players. There seems to be a massive focus, and even during this event, there seemed to be a focus on trying to market something towards the newer players that are playing the game. And there's an emphasis more on the newer players that are playing the game as opposed to the existing people who play the game, who contribute towards the community on a daily basis, who put YouTube content out there, the people who are experienced, the veterans of the game. And a lot of people during the Christmas event, they felt aggrieved that the more experienced players, the people who may have every tank in the game, for example, they may have just felt the need that they needed to go out and try and grind for the T22 because they've got every other tank in the game, and all they were getting for that was credits or gold, and for some reason that doesn't satisfy their need. Wargaming, I think they could work more with, I suppose, the more experienced people in the community. Their community contributors, I know they have conversations with them regularly with regards to what's their opinion on the game. And take, for example, the whatever update, it was 3.8. I think they met with some players in Minsk, or they met with some players and they had a call with some of the experienced players who play the game, and they gave their opinions of the game. Wargaming are kind of sending out mixed signals. One minute they're trying to focus or trying to market the game towards the newer players in the game who are actually making the money, and then the next minute they're marketing their game towards the people who are more experienced or the veterans of the game. I think they haven't really found that common ground when it comes to being able to market it at both types of players. And I think Wargaming as of late have been marketing the game more towards the newer players who are playing the game because they're happy or they're content to lose players. People communicate on a daily basis that they're leaving the game or they're not playing the game anymore. These are players who have multiple premium tanks who have spent money on the game, but Wargaming don't really show any signs that they care about those kind of players. I think Wargaming could do more when it comes to actually being able to try and address the negativity. The way that they market their events, the way they use the same marketing plans. Military honor, I think there's a massive change needed for military honor in order to try and address the issues of negativity in the game. I'm not going to harp on about it so long. I do remember though when military honor was first introduced, I thought the community changed. I thought there was a lot of positivity floating around in the game, and then people learned how military honor worked, and then they started abusing or started manipulating how military honor works, and then it just returned to a negative kind of vibe. That's a harder issue to address, but I play other free-to-play games and the communities aren't as negative. Take PUBG for example. I personally don't think it's as negative as a game, but I mean that's probably something I might talk about at a later point. Last thing I wanted to talk about was some of the changes then, the upcoming changes in 5.7. There's going to be some changes to the 183. There's a lot of people that are happy about that. There's a lot of 183 drivers at the moment who are playing tier 10, playing that tank. So there are a lot of players out there who believe that tank needs to be balanced, who needs to be corrected, needs to be nerfed, and the gun is getting a dispersion. It's going to be nerfed. The dispersion is going to be changed, the camo is going to be changed, and I believe the traverse is also going to be changed. Now, I personally think that's too much of a nerf on the tank. I do remember the tank when it was first introduced to the game. It was pretty bad. The gun handling stats on the game when it was first introduced was tragic, and I do feel for anyone who's grinding that line at the moment. To grind that line, it's a very tough line to grind. You've got the AT-15, the AT-7, AT-8, the Tortoise, and then only to get to the tier 10, which is going to be nerfed now. It seems like a big nerf, but time will tell. It'll be interesting to see if people stop playing the tank, or if they'll just simply find another tank to substitute it with. I personally don't think that the camo nerf is a good thing for that tank, because I think it's only going to encourage more people to camp at the back. I think what they should have really done, Wargaming, is they should have made small changes to nerf the tank over time, and they could have been making these changes before now, and we could have maybe been at a point where the 1A3 is less harmful to the game. There's a lot of people that complain about the game, like that tank in the game in particular. Like I do feel in terms of matchmaking, when you've got two of those on a team, it does impact the game. I personally don't mind seeing one of those on a team, as I'm shooting a 1A3. But I have a 1A3 at the moment. I don't really enjoy playing the game. I don't enjoy playing the tank. My stats aren't that good in it, and I'm probably the kind of player that shouldn't be playing the tank. I will probably be selling it. I've been thinking for the last couple of months that I wanted to sell it, so I probably will sell it. I've already aced it, so yeah, time will tell. I'll see what it's like after the nerf, and then I may sell it. Also, the changes in 5.7, the Chinese TDs are going to be introduced. That's going to be interesting, because I think there's a lot of there has been some focus on the mouse line, the VK 100 at tier 8. That it's like a mouse at tier 8. That's a tough tank to get through. That VK 7201 K, I think it is, at tier 10. The motion, those are two lines of tank that were added to the game in the last couple of patches, so it'll be nice to see the TDs, a new line of TDs being introduced. They're also going to make some changes to the additional collectible tanks, the Warhammer 4000 tanks, so your Vindicator and your Predator. Those two tanks are going to become collectible tanks, which I think, from a wargaming perspective, I think it makes sense, because those weren't really part of any tech tree lines. The Girls and Panzer tanks are also going to become collectible tanks, so your Kuramori Mine and your Anko. I'm not sure how I feel about those. I've got those two tanks. I'm probably going to sell them. I think I've aced both of those tanks. I'm probably going to wait to see what they're going to do to the tanks, if they're going to nerf the tanks, and what they play like after the changes, and then I'll make up my mind to decide whether or not I'm going to sell them. That's pretty much it. I'm literally just wrapping up this game. This is the T30. I was managed to ace it. That's really all I wanted to talk about and discuss. Feel free to add a comment if you agree or if you disagree. I'd like to create some talking points on this video. But for now, thanks for listening if you're still listening, and I'll say goodbye and catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.